Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to the poem Mediums. This is poem number 12 of the 22 of From Noon to Starry Night. Here we will come back to the 1855 preface of Leaves of Grass. We're going to get a number of echoes and lines lifted right out of that preface. This is back to Whitman as politician, his love of democracy and Americans. And so we're going to come back to that position that he has taken again and again in our study of Leaves of Grass, his celebration of democracy. Now, our assumption is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist, and that you were there from the very beginning in the inscriptions, poems, up through and including a set of introductory comments to Starry Night, and then we just finished with thoughts. Now, our Nortons will tell us about this poem, that it was originally as Chance Democratic number 16 in Leaves of Grass 1860, the present title in 1867, transferred in 1871 to Passage to India, and in Leaves of Grass 1881 to the present cluster. The one significant variant shows only in the Barrett manuscript America instead of democracy in the third line. The few revisions in the printed text were minor. The poem was probably composed in the mid-1850s and is related to the prophetic tenor of the first poems and as we said, the preface of 1855. When he uses the word Gospels, by the way, in this poem, he's using it in its original meaning of good tidings. Now, this poem is a fascinating one to me because he's going to call it mediums, but that's the only use in all Leaves of Grass of this word, and what he really means is conveyed as he gets to the word at the end of the poem. Notice the repetition in the anaphoria of they shall, they shall, they shall 7 times at the beginning of this line. And the they, the antecedent to the pronoun they, is of course Americans. They shall arise in the states. Notice right away this notion of taking flight, elevation, rising. They shall report nature, notice capitalized, makes us think of Emerson's classic essay that we've given full lectures on at learnstrong.net. Nature, laws, physiology, and happiness. Always, he's talking about happiness. He was so influenced, again, as we've said, by Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of Scooby Snacks. This idea of happiness is right here. They shall illustrate, notice capitalized, democracy and the cosmos. Cosmos, of course, used 6 times in Leaves of Grass. We've commented already on it. They shall be, and now he uses 3 words that will only appear this moment in Leaves of Grass. Elemented, amative, perceptive. For each one of them, notice, all about the ability to build, the ability to improve, right? They shall be complete. Earlier, of course, it was the word perfect. They shall be complete women and men. Their pose, brawny, you'll remember that word from Song of Myself 41, and supple. Their drink, water. Now, we commented on this when we were messing around with I Sing the Body Electric number 3, and as well, We Two Boys drinking together. This idea that only you drink water. So in other words, Whitman in his temperance phase is very opposed to alcohol and the consumption of alcohol. So the idea is here that true Americans are simple and they're healthy and they only drink water, will be his thing here. Their blood clean and clear, this idea, in other words, that they don't have any kind of diseases. Go back to our study of Song of the Open Road to hear how he comments on, if you have these ailments, you're not traveling with me on the road. They shall fully enjoy, back to happiness, they shall fully enjoy materialism and the sight of products. In other words, capitalists, right? They shall enjoy the sight of the beef, lumber, breadstuffs of Chicago, the great city. It's interesting that he would pick Chicago here and not Manhattan or not New York. It would rather be Chicago. And of course, this will lead us at 3A to think about Carl Sandburg's classic Chicago, the 1914 offering. They shall train themselves to go in public, to become orators and oratesses. Now, 2 things I want to say here. Notice with this idea of training, we're back to Whitman as pedagogue, Whitman as educator. The notion that everything about American democracy is rooted in education. And then notice that there will be orators and oratoresses. In other words, both males as well as females will become great speakers. right? Strong and sweet shall their tongues be. In other words, there's going to be this love of language that Americans will possess. And of course, his use of this notion, this masculine notion of strength. Strong and sweet shall be their tongues, shall their tongues be. Poems and materials of poems shall come from their lives. By the way, did you hear all these S sounds? Strong and sweet shall their tongues be. Poems and material of poems. Back to the preface of 1855, you'll remember the line, your very flesh shall be a great poem. In other words, Americans will carry their understanding of democracy in their very bodies themselves. The way we carry ourselves will prove that we are in fact lovers of democracy, lovers of freedom, lovers of liberty. And the idea here is fascinating when you marry it to what happens next. There be poems and materials of poems shall come from their lives. They shall be, and here's the key line, makers and finders. Now, this is Whitman maybe at his pedagogic best. What is it that schools should really be about? Well, they should be about helping you to become somebody that makes things and somebody that finds things. You got to be curious and you got to be capable. And for Whitman, if schools don't do that, then they are a complete folly. They are a complete waste of time. Interesting. Of them and of their works shall emerge divine conveyors. Notice he didn't use the word mediums. Instead he uses conveyors. To convey gospels. You'll remember this use of convey from I Sing the Body Electric too. And again, his use of the word gospel here is not a religious term as much as it is an idea of good news, good tidings, right? Characters, events, retrospections shall be conveyed in gospels, trees. It always comes back to nature. I told you guys this. Animals, waters. Notice earlier it's drinking water. Now it will be the waters of the lakes and the rivers shall be conveyed. Death, the future, the invisible faith. Again, this idea of his use of the word faith takes us all the way back to cabined ships at sea. The very beginning lines of Leaves of Grass will use this word faith. Shall all, and again his use of the word all is central in our reading of Leaves of Grass, be conveyed. In other words, what's his argument? Americans will live out the very evidence of their democracy in their physical bodies as well as their mental, emotional, spiritual bodies. To that degree at 2A, well, I think that the real central message here is that America and Americans will be two things, makers and finders. It is an interesting construction to ask if that is in fact, is that really fundamental to what it means to be an American, that we believe in making things and we believe in exploring, finding things. At 2B, I love the anaphoria of the seven, they shall, they shall, they shall. It's predictive, right? In other words, it's kind of instructive. It's propedeutic. This is the way that Americans will be. At 3A, we mentioned Sandburg's Chicago, the 1914 offering. To ask why this poem is in Noon to Starry Night, as we said, the reconciliation of the diametrically opposed at times. But I think here the emphasis is on from noon to starry night is about progress. And I think this is where Whitman is really focusing. Americans are about making and finding things, therefore progress, right? Finally, at 3B, how are we going to own a poem like this? Well, as Americans, do you feel like we are still makers and finders? And do you feel like our schools are designed to help us become makers and finders? And to what degree is reading Leaves of Grass helping you to become more of a maker and a finder? Thank you.